Guys, here we are. I am here with all my favorite people to talk to. There are things happening in the world of MMA, and me and this next man are going to break it all down. You know him as one of the legends in the game of MMA media, the one and only Luke Thomas. There are things cooking in the back end, my friend.
What's that a euphemism for?
You know, there are things happening. Well, you know, when there's blood on the street, buy real estate.
Yeah, LT is around when there's blood in the street. LT is around. Remember that.
But dude, you know where there's not going to be as much blood on the street as UFC 313 because Dan Hooker versus Justin Gaethje, it ain't happening, man. I got to ask, what was your reaction when this whole thing got revealed? Because I spoke to Dan last week. When I was walking around UFC 312 in Sydney, that fight between Dan Hooker and Justin Gaethje, it almost was the main thing they were pushing from 313, like on the posters. It was as prevalent as Pereira and Ankalaev. It really felt like this was going to be the fight they were going to use to really sell this pay-per-view and get people across the board on this one.
Yeah, I mean, probably more so in Australia than here, but obviously here too. Dude, I'll be honest with you. You may not get too many people that have this reaction, and I'm being, dude. The older I get, I'm telling you, like you have to just honor the way your body or your mind, whatever, makes you feel situation to situation. Like you have to acknowledge it, and you have to like reason with it, or you know, at a bare minimum, try to process it. I should say, dude, I felt relief. I'm being dead serious. I felt relief. Not relief at the idea that we lost a great fight, because you know, there's simply no question that is a great fight, right? I mean, there's, you know, two absolute war horses of the highest order, a little bit Twilight-ish of their career, certainly in the Gaethje equation. But, you know, I'm not in any way describing the quality or the nature of what we were to expect in terms of the violence. But, you know, when you've been around the fight game a long time and you've watched fans and come and go, and you're still kind of there, and some of these aging fighters are still there, and then you've seen them age out. Dude, these two guys were going to kill each other. I mean, you know, not literally, obviously, although that's certainly a risk that they run, but they were going to do real bad damage to each other. And, you know, people always think about some of the stuff that Dan Hooker's been in terms of like really tough spots and, you know, bad fights, and even fights where it was a great fight, but like, you know, the Dustin Poirier fight, that was a real brutal ass fight. But dude, years before that, you had Daniel Cormier screaming at the screen, and the referee, I should say, when Hooker was in that Barboza fight. I spoke to Hooker after that Barboza fight, and I was asking him, you know, did you take too much punishment? And he laughed it off. He was like, you know, it's not boxing. We can take punishment. He literally said, we can take punishment everywhere, so it's spread out. that's what he said, you know? Yeah, and then you got a guy like Justin Gaethje. I mean, need I say more? I mean, you know, one of the most insane action fighters literally of all time. Like, dude, this fight was going to be bananas. But just knowing what Justin was coming off of, knowing how much damage overall, even if it is distributed, that Hooker has taken, I am, like every other MMA fan, sad that we don't have a great replacement there ready to go. I mean, that fight's going to be hard to replace, but I would be 1,000,000,000% lying if I said I didn't feel a degree of relief for either of them, that they got to, at least in theory, for now anyway, avoid what was probably going to be, you know, an all-timer in terms of the amount of damage they were going to take.
You know what's interesting about your response? I was talking to Robert Whitaker just before, and I asked him the same thing, and he actually said exactly the same thing that you said. I wonder if that's a sentiment that, you know, people that have been around the sport for a while kind of have. That's more common than what we realize. It's also interesting as well because, like, Hooker had, you know, a baby. He didn't really get the longest build up to this fight. It felt like this wasn't going to be the greatest camp for him. So it's good, maybe in silver lining kind of playbook style. Maybe it's better for him to have a better lead up to this one anyway. But let me ask you this, man. Like, there's a few names floating around, and maybe by the time we put this out, they'll make official who's going to be fighting Justin Gaethje. We got Fiziev, we got Beneil Dariush, we got Moicano, we got Gamrot. From your perspective, who do you think out of those guys would make the best fight, the most entertaining fight against Justin Gaethje at UFC 313?
Let's run back the Fiziev fight, which, by the way, I mean, you know, out of the frying pan into the fire, you know what I mean? Like going from Hooker to Fiziev, this is hardly, if you're Justin Gaethje, some walk in the park. But I loved that performance from Justin Gaethje against Rafael Fiziev. You know, he was down, he was getting beaten up, and he absolutely stormed back to win that one in dramatic fashion and in pretty quick succession too. I think it was only a 3-rounder if memory serves. You know, he had to really kind of bite down on the mouthpiece and go, and he did exactly that. And Fiziev withered. And not only was that kind of performance really interesting in the fact that it went one way, then all of a sudden went the other, but you know, that was supposed to be one of those fights where we've been talking about it forever. Like the lightweight next generation was supposed to come up and supplant the existing lightweight generation, and it just didn't really happen. Fights like that were a big reason why they didn't, but it was close the first time. It was competitive the first time. It was interesting the first time. Fiziev wants it. Gaethje's ready. Dariush is an interesting one, but I don't think that has quite the sizzle. Gamrot is obviously going to be tough, but you know, I don't know what kind of, we just have to be honest. I don't know what kind of promotional favorability he's going to get with a style that basically precludes most forms of striking. I'm sorry, that's just where we're at with him. Fiziev seems like a no-brainer. They already have history. The first one was awesome. Their styles match up great. You get some of the same old, new generational kind of tug of war going on there. Give me that one if those are the best 3 that we have available.
Yeah, man. And obviously this is a developing situation, but I spoke to Fiziev's team earlier. They said apparently they said no to Fiziev, but let's see. Maybe this is something that plays into negotiations. You and me have both been in those conversations where they say no, and then all of a sudden it's announced. So we'll see what happens. Dude, 155 though. What is going on in this division? There is so much cooking. Like, for example, we've got Michael Chandler, Paddy Pimblett. That's been announced for UFC 314. You've got Ilia announcing he wants to, you know, make his 155 run. He's vacated the belt. We've got Arman sitting around. He's still got to fight someone else to get back to the title. You've got Charles Oliveira, obviously, as well. Max Holloway sort of floating around. Dustin Poirier wants his last fight. What do you make of this 155 division? It's kind of like New York on the way, like about 4 o'clock, everyone's driving home. It's gridlocked, right?
Yeah, I'd say closer to 5, but yeah, I mean, you know, it's the Times Square subway stop at 4 in the afternoon. Well, I think what you're now finally getting is that turnover. Now, some of that turnover is not necessarily being hastened by the new generation pushing some of that out. There is some of that, but it's not the full explanation. Some of these guys are just aging out, right? Like they would ordinarily. They didn't get their end expedited. I think to an extent, Tony Ferguson hung on, but the end of his relevancy was expedited by virtue of what happened against Justin Gaethje and then obviously subsequent bouts thereafter, right? Like his ending was hastened by virtue of what happened. You're not really getting some of that, but some of these guys are losing. Some of them are aging out. And then you're getting just new entrants. You're getting the featherweight guys, right? As you indicated, a bunch of them have like slowly moved up over time, like your Moicanos and everything, your Poiriers too. But even now, it's just a steady drumbeat where here comes Max Holloway, here comes Ilia Topuria. They're just injecting a new bit of life. And so you're trying to sort that, how you accommodate all of the new fresh faces while some are already on their way out, while also, as you indicated, Chandler versus Paddy. I mean, that fight is many things, but one of them that it cannot be in any way contested is that it is old versus young, again, relatively speaking, for that division. So to me, what you're seeing is it's not fully done yet by any stretch of the imagination. It's been kind of a slow and somewhat, I would say, thwarted process. But now that churn, now that generational churn, and not just generational, but like just newer faces, because Max has obviously been around for a while, but not in this division all that much, say for, you know, Poirier fight and whatever. Now you're starting to get in the Gaethje fight. Now you're starting to get some of that churn moving through, and so it just looks like, you know, like what is it, the walkway in Japan, the Shinjuku walkway, whatever that is, where just like 7 different directions everyone's coming from. It looks like that, you know.
Yeah. Max is like, you got to be kidding me. Ilya's now 155. What the hell?
I know. And so
Can't get away from this guy.
Did you see someone tweeted him and they were like, "Yo, Max, you gonna go to 45?" It's like, I don't want to make that cut, bro. But he did one of these things. He's like, what are we supposed to do? You know. So the good news for Max is he's still got a title, and Ilia doesn't, technically speaking. So, you know, he's still doing pretty well for himself, I'll say.
Okay, so if you had to guess who was going to be fighting Islam for the belt next, obviously this whole thing is being figured out. What's your prediction here?
Topuria.
You think they're actually going to do it?
I don't know what you're supposed to do if it's not him. Right? Okay, so First of all, if Belal wins, I mean, maybe they'll make that, but I don't know if that's what's going to happen. That seems unlikely. If JDM wins, okay, they might do that. I don't think that fight has a ton of sizzle, though. I mean, yes, him going up to 170 against the 170 champ. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's number one pound for pound guy. It's going to have sizzle no matter what. But in MMA, man, you know this too. Like, you just have to follow the money. What's the biggest one that they could make? Bro, it's Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria by a million effing miles. Like, that is bigger than any other fight they could make. You could do a Charles Oliveira rematch. You could do that. You could do a Max Holloway fight. You could do that. These are not bum-ass fights by any stretch of the imagination. Like Max, Charles, these are legit fighters, obviously. But the biggest one that they can make is Ilia. And the fact that Ilia doesn't want to take a number one contenders fight, the fact that they don't seem to mind that he doesn't want to take a number one contenders fight, the fact that, as I indicated, it's the biggest one that they can make. You know, if you're asking what are like the top 5 biggest fights UFC can make, period, I don't know if it's number one, but it's on that list too. And if you're stuck with 170 options, you know, again, or limited at a bare minimum, you've got a really strong option in the own weight class with a guy coming up. Sure, you might be tired of the 145 thing, but again, 145 is just an elite feeder system to 55, and it always has been. Conor McGregor came from 145. So many guys came from 145 that they all just move up, and then they populate 155, and then, you know, obviously Conor's situation is a little bit different, but you get the point I'm trying to make. Like, what's a bigger and better fight than you can make than that one? Is the UFC really going to try and have him go to 170? Maintain 2 titles. Again, the big fight you're going to risk that against is Jack Della Maddalena. Maybe. I'm, again, not saying that they wouldn't, but it just seems to me like the one that everyone wants, the one that the top contender wants, the one that the sport would reward, the most interesting fight among them. All of these signs point to Ilia Topuria taking on Islam Makhachev. Again, I wish he could go up in weight because that's what we want, but money talks, and that's the big one. I think it happens this year.
It's crazy as well because I see, like, apparently they're not letting people be double champ anymore. I don't know. Like, this is just Diego Lopes speaking, so I don't know if this is 100%.
So Dana said that that's not true. What Dana said was, you know, they probably don't want you to do it. Like, I don't think that they prefer it, but if you can maintain a defense of 2 belts, they'll let you do it. It's just that most people can't, you know, I mean, you're talking at a minimum 4 fights a year. And a lot of fighters you'll hear say, oh, I wish I had 4 fights a year. Yeah, but it's 4. If you're defending 2 titles, I mean, you're just fighting the Avengers every time. You know what I mean? You're not getting any, it's not like you're getting like Tank Davis has like 1 tough fight and then, like, you know, really, you know, easy tune-up. There's no, if you're defending the 155 title and the 170 title, you're going from Arman Tsarukyan to Shavkat Rakhmonov, back to Ilia Topuria, back to who knows who ends up being the top contender after that. Is it Leon back in the mix or whoever? You know, this is not a thing you can do very easily, but it's not necessarily the case, according to Dana, that it's strictly prohibited. It's just, you gotta if you're feeling froggy, you gotta leap.
Yeah. And I want to get it back into 155 in a sec, but like, Islam Makhachev, is he the guy to do that? I mean, obviously best pound for pound guy out there, but he only fights a couple of times a year when it comes to 155, right? So would he be able to hold both belts, do you think? Is he a candidate for that kind of thing?
I don't think I mean, can he make that weight going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down like that? No, it just it's unrealistic. It's just totally unrealistic. I mean, you could do it for a little while, you know. If you were a small heavyweight and you want to like hold the 205 title at the same time, I think that might be a little bit more doable, something like that. But these guys, man, their bodies are attuned to a very specific weight class, process, system. You start tinkering with that, everything gets much more difficult. He struggles to make 155. Obviously, you can make 170. I don't think it's really any issue, but just the alteration to your body and then staying active. No, he cannot defend 2 titles at once. No.
Let me ask you about this Paddy Pimblett, Michael Chandler fight. This is an interesting one, right? Because Pimblett, he's been kind of like the next big thing for a while now. If he beats Chandler here and is able to sort of have an impressive performance, he'll be right in there. You know, it's going to really push him up. I'm just wondering, though, how do you think that fight goes? Do you think Pimblett could beat a Michael Chandler?
Sure, I do. I was never a big believer in Paddy, and I still think his upside is somewhat limited. But I have been wrong about him. He's been in certain ways much better than I thought he would be. I always thought he had good back takes and good back control, and that's gotten even better. Like he's 1,000,000,000% built that out. But you know what? He's built out some other portions of his game. He's built out his physique too. He looks like he's chiseled out of stone when it's it's the time to fight. Like he really is a gigantic lightweight. Yeah, I absolutely think he can win that contest. Dude, Michael Chandler is old and reckless. Yeah, 1,000%. He's reckless with positioning. He's reckless with his his punching dynamics. He's just overly aggressive all the time, and it's part of the reason why people like him. And it is on some level actually part of why he's been a success. But it also is a vulnerability. And if you do something like that against a good guy with back taking ability and then ability to sub from the back, dude, like, I mean, do I need to tell you that Michael Chandler's had trouble defending people who've had his back? Like he's lost multiple times that way. Be a submission, not just from someone holding positional control at that. Dude, these are all things Paddy is really good at. On the other hand, and this is why the matchmaking is fantastic, dude, the guy has his chin on the air like it's nobody's business. Someone is going to send that thing into the fifth fucking row if they connect with it soon enough. He is waiting to get chinned. I mean, just waiting. But he's worked on that to a degree. I think all parts of his game have gotten better. He's got some strengths and he's got some weaknesses like anybody else. But the point I'm trying to make is, one, I think, if I'm being serious, I think his real vulnerabilities is striking defense. And Michael Chandler is not like, a pinpoint guy, but he is fast and he is super heavy-handed. And while that risk-taking could get him into trouble, it can also elevate him and help him to just absolutely overwhelm, in certain cases, a crowded opponent.
So if you're the UFC here, you got this Paddy Pimblett guy, young fighter, someone that can really draw. They're throwing him a little bit in the deep end to see how he does. Let's say he comes out victorious. How do you manage his run to sort of get the most out of him? I'm guessing the UFC are going to want to sort of try and squeeze as much juice out of Paddy Pimblett before he eventually, someone lands a shot on him, like you said, and he goes into the nosebleed section. Obviously, he's got this rivalry with Tapura. So if Tapura is able to become champion, you can sort of build towards that as well. What do you think the future holds for Pimblett if he is able to be successful here against Chandler?
Man, I tell you what, they're going to push him up that title contender queue fast. And I don't know exactly what they might do in the sense of, do they put him right into a title fight, or do they make him take like a quasi top 5, top 3 guy? I suspect that they probably would. So I think he's got at least, beating Chandler is relevant and important, but he'd probably have at least one more after that before getting a title shot, depending on how that would go. But like, dude, it's kind of funny. Like I thought, obviously when Tapura moved to 40, or not moved, but was a 45 guy, you're like, oh, all right, well, him and Paddy they're not going to fight, even though they had that beef. And then here they are. Paddy's kind of moving up the ranks. Ilia's basically already there. I think that matchup is uniquely bad for Paddy. If you actually made that, I think Topuria would decapitate him, but that's an opportunity you could have. The point is that it's not even about Topuria. If Paddy ends up winning this contest, the only fights relevant after this are against names. That's it, like a Charles Oliveira type, or if I don't think Poirier is going to hang around, but somebody like that. You could do even Max Holloway, somebody who's got a name. Like the time for beating guys who compete largely at the Apex, largely at fight nights, that's over after this, man. That's over. Now, if he loses, you're right back out there. But if he wins, man, he is 1,000,000,000% going to be in the very, very, very short list, I think, for not like immediate title guy, but really not far behind. And in the case of emergency break glass kind of a guy, it'd be a remarkable turn for, because it's kind of funny. Like he came to the UFC with a lot of fights. And my supposition was, if your skill set is that lopsided after that many fights, that's probably the end of your development, or not the end, but you're not going to go too much further. And he actually has gone further. He actually really has kind of improved. So let's see what he turns in. But I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm not predicting a title fight as a guarantee, but a win over Chandler makes that one extra, extra close. And that by itself is actually pretty impressive given how he started.
Yeah, this division is developing at a breakneck pace. Like 1 week, it's one thing, next week it's the other. Let me ask you just quickly, on Dan Hooker, there's Justin Gaethje fight's not happening. him and Arman, they have this huge, feud. It's been happening now for years. Arman needs to fight again before potentially getting into that sort of contention area. I don't know what his relationship is like with the UFC. What do you do with both guys next? Do you match them up together and cash in on the fact that these guys dislike each other and this could be a big build-up? One guy comes out on top, puts themselves into a better position in the division, or what do you do with these guys? What would you do with these guys?
The thing about it again is that's not a bad fight by any stretch, and as you indicated, they seem to have beef, and it serves a lot of purposes. Hey, can Hooker beat a guy like Saryukian? If Saryukian gets past Hooker, are we now back to him getting a title fight? Like it solves a lot of problems, and again, it's bad blood. The thing for me is this: Hooker just came off the Gamrot fight, which is, I'm not going to say a identical fight to what you would get with Arman Saryukian, but it's pretty close. Part of the joy that we had when they booked the Gaethje fight was that it was a departure from that, where Hooker's not having to be chased down and fighting off takedowns constantly. And again, I don't necessarily mind that, but the market tends to in the UFC, I think when they have an opportunity to not go down that path, they will more often than not select the choice to not do it. It's like, what are we really going to get out of that? Why would you go from one of the most, on paper, insane action fights you can think of to let's make Hooker wrestle again? You could do it for all the reasons we aforementioned, but I don't know. That just doesn't feel to me like the right fight. And if Fiziev is being turned down by Gaethje, well, then give Fiziev to Hooker. I want to see that one.
Yeah, that's a great fight. All right, let's just quickly talk about 170 for a sec, man. So Belal and JDM, I was sort of trying to break this thing down, man. JDM, he's kind of like a young dark horse in the division. No one really knows his complete upside just yet. This is far from an easy fight from Belal. How do you actually, when you look at this fight, are you giving JDM a chance here to kind of shock the world and sort of take the belt away from Belal? There's a number of things that he brings into this fight that are going to make this very, very interesting. And one of those is, of course, the youth as well. The guy is just in the peak of his run right now and brings in a lot of dangerous weapons into this Belal fight.
I think this is a doable but largely uphill climb for JDM. Belal Muhammad is very good about pressuring. He has an absolutely, I think Khamzat Chimaev has the best shot in MMA, the best like level change shot into a double or single, but Belal's right behind it. Belal has such a fantastic wrestling shot. It's so quick. He gets real low. He penetrates, all the way through. It's a fantastic shot. And so you get from there, and now you're fence wrestling against a guy like Belal. That's tough. That's a very, very tough thing. Now, I know JDM is coming off the Gilbert Burns win, although that one nearly got away from him too. I was the thing he had to kind of rescue at the kind of the last second. I think this is a very tough fight. On the other hand, JDM is, I think capable of stuffing at least some of the shots. I think he's capable of keeping the fight on the feet, at least for some parts of the rounds. And on the feet, I think the way in which he can move downhill on people, really putting flow combinations together where he's surprising you with shot placement choice.
All right, guys, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, MANSCAPED, who make this podcast possible. I'm, of course, talking about the Chairman Plus, the electric foil shaver by MANSCAPED, placing the power of a barber quality shave in the palm of your hand. Whether you're suiting up for the boardroom, getting ready for a date, or setting the stage for cupping season, the Chairman Plus delivers professional grade performance tailored to your style. It's luxury reinvented for the modern man who demands more. Ready to step up? Why not join the trusted movement? Over 12 million men. Visit manscaped.com now. Use the code word submission. Get 20% off and free shipping now, and you keep this podcast going. You support this show and you support yourself. Just quickly, what makes the Chairman Plus stand out? Well, it's all about versatility and precision. It comes with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, uses 3-blade foil for a close, smooth shave, has skin-safe technology to help reduce razor burn, and of course, the Chairman Plus is waterproof, so it lets you shave right in the shower. And by the way, how about this? 60 minutes of runtime on a single charge, so you're sorted no matter where you go. Manscaped also has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so why not try it risk-free? Use the code word submission. 20% off and free shipping today. Risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. Manscaped keeps the show alive and keeps your dating life and your smoothness alive too. Jump on Manscaped right now. And guys, I just want to talk to you about our other sponsors, SAILY. SAILY is a groundbreaking eSIM that has you sorted wherever you go in the world. Super low prices, super easy to use. All you got to do is download this app. Have a look at me. I'm in the app. I choose the destination to where I need to go. Boom, click a couple of buttons, and I'm set. Forget about taking out your SIM card. Forget about lining up in long lines at the airport. Forget about having to change your phone number and everything about your phone. SAILY has you sorted. It's easy, it's simple. It comes with all the security features that you need. Why not just use the amount of money that you need for the destination that you need without having to sign up to crazy plans that go for months at a time that you have to get out of, or paying per day crazy amounts of money and coming back at the end of the holiday to having to take out a loan just to pay off the amount of money that you spent on the holiday using your phone. So do this right now. Go to saily.com/submission or click the link in the bio below. Get 15% off your first purchase with the code word submission. That's 15% off your first purchase with the code word submission. Get SAILY in your life and change it forever. And now, back to the program. I always wondered about this, and people are going to kind of crack it at me in the comment section, but I want to get your thoughts on it. What do you think a prime Belal versus a prime GSP fight looks like? Because I was trying to break.
Yeah,
I think
GSP hurts him real bad. Yeah. I mean, again, I just spent all this time talking about how much I think Belal is good, and I don't change any of that. But I mean, I watched every single UFC fight that George St. Pierre had, almost all of them live. You know what I mean? Like were
you there for the Johnny Hendricks fight?
That one, I watched. Was I there for that one? I don't know if I was there for that one.
Which one is that? Let's see. GSP.
That was a while ago. I mean, that was the last one before the Bisping fight.
UFC 167. Where were you on the 17th of November, 2013, Luke Thomas?
I was at MMA Fighting at the time, so I don't know. I'm not sure what I was doing for that one. But
was that when you were? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The point I wanted to make is, sorry, what was the question again? I just meandered in my
prime GSP versus prime Belal. Can we give Belal some kind of shot here?
I think Belal is good enough to make it competitive, but I don't think he wins. I mean, George St. Pierre, I just can't tell you how many top guys I watched him out wrestle. I mean, it was just insane. Oh well, who's Josh Koscheck? Oh, I'm sorry, did you say Division I national champion from Edinburgh? Is that who we're talking about? That Josh Koscheck, that guy? I mean, get the fuck out of here. What a ridiculous argument. And St. Pierre out wrestled him twice and then jabbed up his face so bad he couldn't even fly home from Montreal because his whole shit was broken. They had to do surgery, let it heal, and then he could go home. That's how much he got fucked up. Like, please be serious about this. So I do respect who Belal is. He is the deserving champion, no question about it. He beat Leon fair and square, and he's got a tough game to deal with. But I think over the course of 5 rounds, he's getting manhandled. Manhandled's a strong word. Over the course of 5 rounds, he's going to get controlled by GSP. If not finished, certainly he'll be on the defensive end of things.
I just want to, while we're on UFC 315, man, I saw a comment online and I want to get your thoughts on it. People are saying that Jose Aldo, who, by the way, is now fighting as well on the card against Zahabi, they were saying that they feel like Aldo is one of those, one of the most underused big name sort of legends on the UFC roster because of the matchups that he gets. Maybe UFC 315 is an example of that. You got a legend here who's still going. Do you feel like the UFC are using him appropriately, or is this just, hey, let's get a name value, put it up against some of the younger guys, get the rub off him while he's still around? Should he be used in a different way, a different capacity, maybe against other legends or bigger fights? Well, let's make the most of this while he's still around.
I don't understand how fighting Mario Bautista and Ayman Zahabi is a better call than Aldo fighting Patricio Pitbull and Dominic Cruz. Don't understand that one at all. I mean, I understand what the UFC's position might be, which is we want to kind of use him like a Jim Miller and see what we've got with some of these guys and whether they're coming or going. And, in that sense, Aldo serves a helpful purpose for us. But as a fan, I don't have as much interest in that. As a fan, what do you have more interest in? And again, I like Ayman Zahabi too. I don't think he's a bad fighter by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. Hell, he might even win. But am I more interested in that than I am Aldo fighting Pitbull? I mean, I don't even know what the fuck we're doing here. And they're fighting in reasonably similar times, 3:14 versus 3:15. And now, of course, the Pitbull versus Yair Rodriguez fight is also awesome. Don't misunderstand me, but you understand what I'm pointing out. I just don't get it at all. I don't like if what is the sole determinant here, what the UFC wants, and in turning Aldo into a glorified Jim Miller. And again, there's nothing wrong with the Jim Miller thing, but Jim Miller never held a title. He was never like he's not in the conversation for the best ever. He was a very good lightweight who just wanted to be like a martial artist as long as possible. And I guess if Aldo wants to do that too, then far be it from us to take it away from him. But what I would say is make the argument to me that Aldo versus Pitbull, Patricio Freire, Aldo versus Dominic Cruz, that those are lesser interesting, smaller box office fights than Aldo versus Mario Bautista and Aldo versus Ayman Zahabi. I just don't think you can make that argument.
I'm Jose Aldo. I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm like, coming back.
You know what he's doing?
Saying back.
Yes, dude. They're not like twist. I mean, they're probably putting pressure on him in some level, but like, say no. Just say no. How hard is that? If you don't want these fights, I mean, we keep like this is what I mean. Like, we're like, oh, UFC's doing this, and yeah, they probably are. They're probably the ones in the driver's seat, like they are most of the time. But if you don't want those fights, dude, just say no. And he's not, and so here we are. I'm glad I'd rather he be fighting than not. I think Ayman Zahabi's a good fighter. I just see these obvious promotional layups that they're not going to. And it, like the rest of you, I'm like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing.
Him and O'Malley would have been great if he wasn't getting the next title shot. All sorts of great fights. But yeah, I'm just like, I don't know, man. Say no. That's a good one. That's a good piece of advice. Another person that has struggles to say no is Alex Volkanovski. He is now fighting Diego Lopes. I spent some time around Lopes in Sydney, Luke, and this guy is actually a lot bigger than what most people realize. He is a tall dude. He is a big dude. He is young. He is hungry. He's going to run at Volkanovski and throw everything but the kitchen sink at him in this matchup. Give me your feel on this one. Obviously, Volkanovski, an absolute legend, but this is going to be far from an easy fight from him in Miami, right?
I think there are a bunch of people who think Volk is going to go in there and tool him. And I'm not convinced that's the likeliest thing that's going to happen. Now, let's be very clear about this, both in terms of what their resumes show as well as what the tape shows. Volkanovski is a vastly more talented guy than Diego Lopes. Now, Diego Lopes is talented, and Diego Lopes has talents in certain dimensions of the game that Volkanovski does not. But in terms of the level at which the technical and strategic mastery and the physical ability to deliver on them, there are not many guys in the history of the sport like Alex Volkanovski, right? So he is just vastly more talented, but that doesn't necessarily mean jack shit in MMA. He is coming off of back-to-back KO losses. Both of them were terrible. He has taken some time, and that's great, but he is now much older. And you've got a guy in Diego Lopes who is unrefined in certain ways. Fair enough. I mean, if it's a question of like whose striking is better, in terms of all the dimensions and the things that Volkanovski can do, his is much better. But a guy like Lopes is the king of the blitz. He swarms. He puts multi-strike combinations together. He has offense absolutely everywhere, and if your defense is not on point from the beginning of that fight to the end of it, you're going to wake up looking at the lights. That's just what's going to happen to you. And for a guy to be as damaged, old, and basically in terms of like being in a winning rhythm as or to lack thereof in the case of Volkanovski, this is a tough ass time for him to be fighting Diego Lopes. People want to look at the tape and say, oh, isn't Volk just much more skilled? Sure, that doesn't necessarily save him in this contest. If this was a 32-year-old Volk, 33 even, it's a very different kind of conversation than the one we're having where he's coming off multiple vicious KO losses past the age of 35 against a guy who is all offense. I'm telling you, if he goes in there and starches out Volk in a round, the very last thing you could be is surprised. That's not me telling you that's my ultimate prediction, right? I mean, we already know there's, there tends to be like a likelier range of how things go. And, Volk is not some simpleton either. He's going to be ready to go as best he possibly can be. But the circumstances, I'll say this, I give Volk a slight edge just because of how fucking skilled and talented he is. But all of the other factors, man, they make this one razor close. Volk has to be on his P's and Q's defensively in this fight, because if he is not, it's going to be bad, and it's going to get bad quick, and he's going to get overwhelmed super fucking quick. Cannot afford to do it with this guy.
But this is an interesting thing, right? Because if Volk does get past Lopes, he's able to beat such a tough challenge. Hey, we've got some fun fights here, like you mentioned, Patricio Pitbull on the card against Yair Rodriguez. If he can win, hey, there's a matchup we've been waiting for a while. You got Mosa hanging around. And Volk's already said to Ariel he'll be happy to do a quick turnaround and fight Mosa next. Things could be very interesting. I mean, regardless whether Lopes or Alex win, things are going to get very interesting at 145 after UFC 314, right?
I know, but can you imagine if Volk does lose? Let's say he gets stopped a third time in a row. Dude, like that division all of a sudden has lost Volk. It has lost Max. It has lost Ilia. Aldo left for some time ago. You still have some other guys there, but it's at that point, yeah, Volk wouldn't retire on the spot, but he at that point would be in a really fucking bad place. You would have a very different division that I don't think actually is nearly as good at that point. You lose those, you're losing three amazing talents in a situation like that. Again, to your point, though, if Volk ends up winning and goes on a second run or some kind of second run, some modified version of it or whatever, then I think happy days are here again. But dude, that dude has his, this is why taking these short notice fights against real tough guys is a super fucking bad idea, because it didn't work against Islam, and whatever it did for him, the answer is not much in terms of helping him against Ilia. And if he's still carrying the effects and Lopes is able to feast on him as a consequence, a guy who, again, losing to Islam, all right, number one guy in the world, up a weight class, it sucked, but look at the quality of opposition. Ilia Topuria, I think number 2 pound for pound in the world. I'd put him well ahead of John Jones. Losing to that guy, I don't think is really, you're not losing to some bum fucking guy. And Diego Lopes is not a bum either, but he's definitely not on the level of a Topuria and a Makhachev. He's just not a pound for pound guy like that. Certainly not yet. To lose to that is you be entering new frontier at that point. So let's see.
Yeah, UFC 314, a lot of interesting questions to be answered. And hello, Darkness, my old friend. If that does work out, as we wrap up, Luke, give me a movie and a TV show recommendation that you've been doing. You've been watching Reacher, man? As an ex-Marine yourself, I thought you'd be all over Reacher, bro.
So there's no such thing as an ex-Marine. Has anyone ever told you that before?
No, please explain, sir. You're always a Marine.
For the Aussies who don't know this, there are basically 4 branches to the military, right? So there's the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, and the Marines. And the Marines, they basically don't need to exist. They exist because, well, we're awesome. But aside from that, they are an amphibious force. So it was basically a smaller, mobile, amphibious, and also they obviously have their own air wing as well. They can do anything that the other services can do, all contained in these units. And what you may not understand is, like, Marine Corps boot camp is longer, infantry school in the Marine Corps is harder, it's longer. Our PFT is harder than the Army PFT. It's just much more selective. And there's a certain kind of tradition that the Marine Corps respects that the Army and the Navy, technically the Marines are a part of the Navy, but as the jokes go, the men's department. The reality is those services don't care as much about their own traditions and their own, I say this in a positive way, their own mythologies as the Marine Corps does. So I bring us all up to say there's a certain way, like there's all different kinds of rules about how we talk about things, what we say, how we name them. We don't say ex-Marines, we only say former Marines. So I am I'm
sorry,
Marine.
Man. Former Marine.
That's right. Former Marine. And don't you forget it. No,
hey, brother. Listen, I don't want any trouble, Hey, I'm from Ukraine. I don't want any trouble.
I'm teasing. I'm old. What the hell am I going to do? Hit
Hey,
you with my cane?
I was looking at Luke Thomas's pissed videos. You look basically the same. I'm like, this is 2010. Give me a. By the way, give me a recommendation.
The recommendation.
TV
Okay.
show and movie.
Okay, so I saw this movie and I've talked about it on my personal channel. I cannot overstate to you how awesome it is. If you're watching in Australian, I don't know how you get it there. You can go to rottentomatoes.com and they'll tell you how to watch in whatever country you're in. So look it up. The only reason I found out about this movie was because I use here in the United States, if you want to buy tickets, there's a company called Fandango. I don't know if they have any. Yeah. So they have an app called Fandango at home. And when movies leave the theater, they go right to streaming. That's the app you can use to pay for stuff. And they had a bundle for like all of these Academy Award nominees for this year. And I was flipping through them and I came upon one that's Iranian called The Seed of the Sacred Fig. Brother.
Seed of the Sacred Fig.
Seed of the Sacred Fig. This movie will blow you away. I'm going to take my glasses off for this one.
Okay.
I could not believe how good it is. Yes, the entire thing is in Farsi. You have to read subtitles unless you speak Farsi, and I don't speak Farsi. But this is such an incredibly well-made movie that has more in plot twists that you absolutely do not see coming. It ends up being a bit of a thriller in the end, certainly a psychological thriller for sure, but it's about so much more than that. It's about the notion of control. It's about the notion of overbearing government. It's about the notion of buying into unethical systems, all this stuff. And it ends up just being this incredible movie. And if that doesn't sell you, they had to make this movie in Tehran in secret. The director had to call in radio. They described to him what was happening. They had to like shoot without permits and everywhere because of the nature of their criticism of the government there. And then when the movie came out, the cast had to flee the country because they were facing 8-year prison sentences for what they were saying in this movie. You must go see this movie. You must see it. It's The Seed of the Sacred Fig. Cannot overstate to you how good. One of the best movies I've literally ever seen. Okay, so that's one. The Seed of the Sacred Fig.
That's it, right?
That's it. And the blindfolded woman, there's a scene with her, and then the guy with the gun is essentially the protagonist. And man, what a story. And that director, Mohammed Rasuluf, is the guy who had him and the whole cast. They had to flee the country. Insane. Wow. Now, I'm not much of a TV series watcher, but I can tell you one thing I've been watching with my daughter. Now, I don't know the name of it, but what I'm going to tell you, anyone will get right away. Have you been watching the new Spiderman cartoon on Disney Plus? That's coming
the one that's like the animated movies, right?
Yes. I got to tell you, again, is it a world changer? No, but it's pretty good. It's pretty well done. It moves along. The characters are well. They're delivered to you well. Like they're believable. Like these relationships are believable. Like, all right, it's a comic book illustrated, whatever, but it's pretty fun.
I didn't peg you for a Spider-Man guy. Is that your guy, Spider-Man?
My daughter loves Spider-Man.
Okay.
So,
is that your number one? Who's your number one? Do you have a number one?
Like superhero guy?
Yeah.
Man, it used to be Batman, but now I realize that all billionaires are social parasites, and I fucking hate them all.
Okay. You think Batman buys a social media platform?
Like, dude, if Bruce Wayne literally existed, he would just buy a newspaper and then control the flow of information while, you know what I mean? Like he wouldn't, he's going to go crime fighting at night. He won't even get his hands dirty. Like this is like the most ludicrous fucking, I mean, the notion of a guy coming from a planet called Krypton, crash landing into our planet, you know, and wearing an S on his chest. That to me is like vastly more believable than billionaire fights street crime with his hands in his free time. I'm like, that's not what they do. That's not how they got $1 billion. They got the $1 billion by doing the exact opposite of that shit. But okay. No, I used to be a big Hulk guy. I used to be a real big Hulk guy. But you know, Thanos kind of fucking smashed him up, man. And it ruined it for me a little bit.
Harrison Ford, Red Hulk.
I'm not seeing that bullshit. I know there was Gray Hulk and stuff. You know what? I think when done correctly, I'm a Superman guy. Wolverine, I always liked. You know, and I like some of the ones from like the comic books too, in the sense of like, you know, that X-Men 97 show. You ever watch that?
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, dude. Like, I think the way in which like Magneto looks like he is at RuPaul's Drag Race in that show, right? But in terms of who he is and the powers he wields, that character is awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Love it. You're a bit of a Bruce Banner of MMA media, man. You got the glasses, and if you get angry, everyone needs to get out of your way. But that's why we love it.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Morning Combat, Luke, LT Live, chat. What's coming up, man? What do people need to look out for?
Let's see. We got Tank Davis watch along for this weekend. Tank Davis, a guy from Baltimore who trained his entire camp in DC, my hometown, is fighting Lamont Roach from DC. Now they're going to fight in New York, which is fucking hilarious, but what are you going to do? But that fight should be fun. We'll do a watch along for that. We'll do a post-fight show for that. And then MK on Monday. By the way, I don't know if he's talked about this yet, but it is in fact true. Brian Campbell, how about this? On the call for the Tank Davis fight. Yes, he is. One half of Mortal Kombat.
Brian.
Yes.
Huh?
He got the call up for the Tank Davis fight. I don't know if I'm supposed to be telling everyone that, but I mean this. The guy is a terrible lout who smells like despair and ass. But he is good at that job. He deserved this call up, and I'm actually pretty proud of him. So, yeah.
All right. Go watch the movie, Seed of a Sacred Fig.
That's it, buddy.
Thomas, I appreciate you, brother. Thank
Anytime.
you.